desert night in late October 1942, the sky over Egypt looked like it was on fire. From a distance, the front at El Alamein was just a trembling orange line on the horizon, flickering with thousands of muzzle flashes, ripples of artillery, and the constant, dull thunder of explosions. Up close, it was something else entirely. On his left, a South African gunner cursed softly as he fed shells into an anti-tank gun. On his right, a Moroccan tirailleur whispered a prayer in Arabic, fingers absently touching the worn wooden beads around his wrist. None of them had ever met before the war. None of them spoke the same first language. Yet tonight, if their line cracked, Rommel's Africa Corps could break through the 8th Army, seize Alexandria and Cairo, and push toward the Suez Canal. Somewhere behind them were the great cities of the Nile, the oil routes to the Middle East, and the fragile prestige of two exhausted European empires. Somewhere in front of them, in the dark, were German tanks, Italian infantry, and minefields that stretched to the horizon. The order along the line was simple: hold, hold, or watch the desert swallow everything. What most of these men didn't know was that if they succeeded, their faces would be nearly erased from the photos of victory. This is the story of how colonial troops saved the desert war at El Alamein, and how history quietly moved them to the edges of the fray. To understand how they ended up on that ridge, we have to rewind the reel. 2 years earlier, in 1940, North Africa was supposed to be an Italian playground. Mussolini's forces in Libya stared across the border at a relatively small British garrison in Egypt. When Italy entered the war, the plan was simple: march east, grab the Suez Canal, and then push into the Middle East. Instead, Italian advances collapsed almost immediately. Troops surrendered in their tens of thousands. It looked like a sideshow that would be wrapped up quickly. But then, Berlin intervened. Hitler sent a small but deadly force, led by a general whose name would become synonymous with desert warfare: Erwin Rommel. With the Africa Corps at his back, Rommel turned the North African front into a deadly tug-of-war. 1 month the British were driving toward Benghazi. The next, they were retreating toward Egypt under the lash of German panzers. Newspapers called Rommel the Desert Fox, a master of surprise attacks and rapid maneuver. It makes for a great story. Brilliant German general versus plucky British underdog. But that version leaves something crucial out. By the time the seesaw battles had ground their way to El Alamein, the British 8th Army was not just British at all. It was a patchwork of empire: Indians from Punjab and Rajputana, South Africans, Australians and New Zealanders, Free French units filled with Algerians and Moroccans, Greek and Polish contingents, and support units from across East and West Africa. The empire had emptied its cupboards to hold the desert line. Daily life for those men was far from the clean, glamorous images you might picture when you hear desert war. The North African desert could kill you long before the enemy did. Sandstorms, the Kamsin winds, could arrive out of nowhere, turning the world into a screaming, orange-brown wall where you couldn't see your rifle in front of your face. Temperatures swung from scorching heat in the day to freezing cold at night. Water was rationed so strictly that some soldiers joked they were expected to shave with steam. Or Indian units, many of whom were used to hot climates but not this kind of dryness, the dust got everywhere in food, in rifles, in lungs. South Africans complained that the desert made the veld back home look like a garden. West and North African troops who had grown up under the sun still struggled with the endless monotony of sand, rock, and sky. And over all of them hung the constant threat of Stuka dive bombers, shrieking down like birds of prey, and artillery shells that could turn a truck or a tent into scrap metal in seconds. In the 8th Army, you didn't just fight Rommel. Transport companies hauled fuel, ammunition, and water across featureless miles where a single wrong turn could lose an entire convoy. The Empire was straining every sinew to build a killing ground at El Alamein, and all the while in both camps rumors swirled. Rommel's men called the British Alibaba. Rumors had whispered along the trenches that the show was about to start. Now Indian gunners in turbaned silhouettes, South African artillerymen in shorts and woolen socks, British and Australian gun crews hunched over breeches as they slammed of the empire. Some lying so close together you could see the different shapes of their helmets, the rounder British and Indian helmets, the distinctive South African pith helmets, the Adrian helmets worn by some of the Free French. Dust settled slowly in the cold morning light. And now came the next part, the tanks. British, Indian and South African armoured units rumbled forward, Shermans and Grants clanking through the cleared lanes, crews squinting through periscopes at a horizon still hazy with smoke. If they could break through into open ground, the Afrika Korps might finally be driven back for good. But if they hit uncleared mines, or if the German anti-tank guns were still intact, the desert would become a graveyard of burning metal. In the northern sector, where the heaviest pressure fell, colonial troops found themselves in some of the harshest fighting. Indian infantry brigades held exposed ridges tasked with clinging to pivot points while armored columns tried to swing through gaps. Their wheels as shells burst on either side. Some vehicles didn't make it, vanishing in pillars of smoke. Those that did door to the invasion of Italy and shift the balance of the entire war. There is try to hear, under the familiar echoes of Churchill's speeches in Monty's memoirs, another sound. The murmur of many languages in the dark, the scrape of shovels in hard desert soil, the low jokes traded between a Nigerian driver and a Punjabi sapper, the whispered prayers of a Moroccan tirailleur and a South African gunner who have never seen each other's homelands, but are, for this one night, bound to the same strip of earth. Try to see, in your mind's eye, not just a line of British helmets, but a long, uneven line of faces from across the empire, picked out in firelight and flare glow, standing between Rommel and the Nile. They did not win the right to write the official history, but they did win the battle. The desert remembers every footprint. The least we can do, all these years later, is remember the men who left them.